Hello and welcome to an episode of Historically Marked. I am Jason in Rochester, Illinois, which is about a few miles east of Springfield. And so I am here to check out a couple Abraham Lincoln markers. And I did not know this, before even coming here, that Abraham Lincoln one time met Martin Van Buren. Martin Van Buren, as you may know, was the 8th president of the United States, serving from 1837 to 1841. But he lost the election to William Henry Harrison, who had the shortest presidency to this day in the United States. But he was really depressed, and he stayed overnight here in Rochester. Lincoln was a state representative living in Springfield at the time, and he had the opportunity to meet, and they hit it off according to these markers. Let me tell you all about it. All right, so that is Razzo's Family Pizzeria. It looks like a nice place. That's a silo. And that's a funeral home right there. And here are two markers. I'm going to go to that one in just a second. But all right, so this is pretty much the story in a nutshell. Yeah, I did not know that he had met Martin Van Buren. As we all know, Abraham Lincoln became the 16th president. But it was June 16th, 1842, that near this location, Abraham Lincoln and former President Martin Van Buren enjoyed an evening together with Mr. Doty in Rochester, Illinois. After serving as president from 1836 to 1840, Van Buren lost the 1840 election to William Harrison. In an effort to regain popularity, Van Buren was on a national political tour, heading to Springfield from Terre Haute, Indiana. However, muddy roads forced him to stop in Rochester for the night. Springfield Democrats believed the small village of Rochester did not offer suitable entertainment for the former president. The group gathered refreshments and brought along the young Abraham Lincoln, who at the time was a simple country lawyer who was known for his storytelling. Lincoln was serving as a state representative in the Illinois legislature as a member of the Whig Party. Several sources confirmed that the two men hit it off. Van Buren later stated that Lincoln's storytelling and jokes provided him with one of the highlights of his life. Put up here on June 16, 2007, which of course is the anniversary of that night. Okay. And then here's a more broadened one. This is, of course, one of the looking for Lincoln markers that are found all over the state where Abraham Lincoln made his mark. This was put up here in 2008. But yeah, it pretty much says the same thing. And it's worth noting that Lincoln and Van Buren were, I wouldn't say on the same or opposite sides of the spectrum, but they were different parties. But it was felt that he would be a fine source of entertainment for Van Buren. And indeed, the two men hit it off splendidly, and Van Buren was later known to have remarked, "It was one of the best evenings I have ever spent in my life." Here is a photo of what may have happened, or not a photo, but a painting that was painted in 2001. Lincoln and Van Buren are dominant figures in the foreground, laughing and thoroughly enjoying the company of one another. In the distance is a receding storm, which symbolizes not only the weather, which precipitated Van Buren's forced layover, but it is also a metaphor for the upheaval in each man's life. Lincoln was depressed over his severed relationship with Mary Todd. Van Buren was distressed by his defeat in the 1840 election. However, the storm, as depicted by artist Helen Stannard, is shown passing and opening up a sunlit sky, indicative of their developing friendship. And in a lot of these looking for Lincoln posts, they have these passport rubbing stamps that you can do for the kids. And in closing, even though June 16th, 1842 is the only recorded meeting of Lincoln and Van Buren, it is evident that this chance encounter made a lasting impression on each of them and molded an enduring friendship. Lincoln was a country lawyer and a member of the Illinois state legislature when he met Van Buren. His political career advanced, however, and by 1860 he was chosen as a Republican candidate for president. Although Van Buren was still a Democrat at the time, he gave his support to Lincoln as he aspired for the presidency. While Lincoln was serving as president in 1862, Van Buren died in Kinderhook, New York. As a tribute to their friendship and respect for the office of president, Lincoln ordered a special military salute in Van Buren's honor. Very, very nice. So it just goes to show how likable Abraham Lincoln was and how personable he was to, for those who may have been on the other side of the spectrum as he. And of course, there's a lot I can get into about Van Buren. I'll put some facts and stuff about Van Buren on the screen. And since I'm here in Rochester, Illinois, I might as well visit this park, this historical park. Now behind me is a really big park and a cemetery. But here's another looking for Lincoln marker. This is the Stevens Stone House. And yes, this does have a lot to do with Lincoln. Stevens came from Charleston, New Hampshire with Samuel West and Lewis Sargent. They operated a grain mill and speculated on land. Samuel Stevens started building a stone house in 1832 in anticipation of his marriage to Lucetta Putnam. Family legend states that Lucetta's father would not allow her to move to untamed Illinois until she had a suitable house in which to live. In July of 1836, Samuel finished the house located on the Springfield to Terre Haute Road. In October 1838, the couple's son Phineas was born. 1 year later, however, Samuel died, and since Phineas was a minor, Lucetta had to sue her son, asking the court to assign her the dower. The court assigned a guardian to safeguard Phineas's interest, and the guardian did not contest the suit. The young lawyer, Abraham Lincoln, wrote the final decree, which named 3 commissioners. And besides Lucetta, there was Henry Geiger and James Bowling, and they were assigned and conveyed the dower to Lucetta. And then over here, another passport stamp. In 1838, Mary Hunt sold 240 acres of land to Samuel Stevens, which he secured with a mortgage. When Stevens died, he had not yet paid for the land. Lincoln petitioned the court to foreclose on the mortgage. The court ordered the foreclosure and was awarded over $2,500, which included the purchase price of the property and the interest. The estate was unable to pay, so the court ordered the land to be sold to pay the debt. Hunt purchased the property at auction for $1,440. And it says here, Lincoln passed by this house on numerous occasions on his way to and from Major Warnick's home east of Rochester. Lincoln supposedly split 8,000 rails for which he was paid in jean cloth. Wow. The cloth was woven by Mrs. Warnick, and Lincoln was paid at the rate of 1 yard of cloth for each 1,000 rails. In the 1850s, rabies ran rampant in Springfield. Lincoln's son, Robert, was bitten by the dog. Lincoln took him to Terre Haute, Indiana to be treated with a mad stone, a hairball taken from a deer's stomach, which was soaked in milk and placed on the wound. Apparently the stone worked, as Robert was the only Lincoln child to reach adulthood. Very, very interesting. Wow. So I thought it would be cool to make an episode, a very quick one, about Martin Van Buren and Abraham Lincoln and how he made his mark in Rochester, Illinois.